This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. In this week's In-Ear Insights, a bit of a different topic, but one that's important to us because obviously, we as well as many other companies do have ethics and values that we say we stand for. In the last month or so, a lot of information has come out about the business practices at Facebook, the Wall Street Journal with the Facebook files, various whistleblowers and things coming out. And the short version is that internally, Facebook as an organization knew that it was doing a tremendous amount of harm to the world, undermining elections, deeply damaging women's self-esteem, all these things that we have known anecdotally or known qualitatively, but now having essentially evidence dug up by investigative journalists and stuff of internal documents saying, hey, we know there's a problem. Hey, there's these groups on Facebook are being used for human trafficking or illegal exchange, all these crazy things. And so, Katie, without getting into the individual details of what all these allegations are, my question to you is this: as people and as companies who say that we have these values, whatever these values are, they are out of alignment with what Facebook is doing. So what obligations do we have to uphold our values by saying we're not going to do business with Facebook while balancing the fact that an awful lot of clients see it as a necessary evil to get marketing results? How do you balance that? And then how do you get people realigning their values with their business results?
Well, I saw little snippets of what came out from 60 Minutes last night, and one of them was that Facebook knew if they changed the algorithm to show, less of the fake information, then people would spend less time on Facebook, and therefore they would, you know, engage with less ads, make less money. So Facebook knowingly said, we care more about money than we care about actual people. So that's problem number one. Um, and that's sort of the crux of the conversation. As a business, I think that, in a idealistic world, we would all just walk away from Facebook and shun them and say, no, we can't do business with you. That's the ideal situation. That, however, is not a reality because there's a lot of shops that are reliant on the revenue from running Facebook ads or running organic social on Facebook or whatever it is they're doing with Facebook. And unless they, have an airtight backup plan to replace that revenue, it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that that's going to be the challenge. There's going to be, for businesses, I think we all want to do the right thing, but then when we look at the financial hit, some of us may not be able to do that right away. And so the obligation then as the business is to come up with a plan to take steps to start moving away from working with software platforms such as Facebook. And so if you say, okay, I can't replace the revenue today, how long would it take me to replace that revenue and what could I replace it with? And so that would be the ideal scenario to say, okay, I'm comfortable walking away because I know what I can do instead. I think that that hard and fast cutoff is going to be really difficult for a lot of companies. The other side of it is that there's a lot of people who, and I'm talking sort of general public, who either aren't aware that this whole whistleblower thing is happening or they don't care. So they're just going to keep using Facebook because they like playing, Fruit Ninja or whatever it is. And they can only get that through a service like Facebook, or they really like the features of Facebook messaging and Facebook phone calls. And so Facebook has ingrained itself into our cultures enough so that the general population's like, yeah, I know that maybe they're evil, but I'm not going to walk away because I really like being able to, post pictures of my cat and talk to my family. So I think there's a couple of things. Companies need to be able to figure out how they can replace that revenue. And the general population needs to also make the decision to walk away because if people still keep using it, then there'll still be a need for it. So it's not an easy situation. It's not an easy, like, we all wake up today, find out that Facebook is evil, and we all shun them. Like, they're a massive, massive global enterprise company, like the biggest social media company. So how do you walk away from that?
Well, and therein lies the problem for a lot of folks is that for some folks, Facebook is the only way they connect with certain groups of people. The analogy or the example I've seen cited a lot is, this is how I stay in touch with, my old high school friends and stuff like that. I would posit that if Facebook is the only way you stay in touch with those people, they weren't that important to you to begin with. Otherwise, you would have stayed in touch with them other ways. But that's, a different thing. The network effect is really strong, and any number of social networks have come along and tried to replace Facebook, try to be a Facebook killer. None have succeeded because of the power of that network. Like, this is where all the people are. These are the people you've already established connections with. And so that inertia, that laziness, if you will, or that at least unwillingness to make change is what keeps Facebook in business, because the switching cost is too high. From a values perspective, if you look at Facebook's values as a company, they are in line with what they do. Right? It says, be bold, focus on impact, move fast, be open, build social value. Nowhere does it say be ethical, be morally correct, make people happy, or make the world a better place. That's not in there. And so what they're doing is technically what they say they're doing. From a utilitarian ethics perspective, they are ethical. They are doing exactly what they said. It's kind of like the old fairy tale, the genies and the lamps. You be careful what you wish for, because you will get it exactly the way you ask for, even if it has substantial unintended consequences. From a change management perspective, then, if we know this is a bad thing and we know we have to build this pathway, this exit ramp from it, how do we do that as companies? What's the process to start our exit plan?
Well, you have to start with the people, because the people are the ones who are going to actually execute any kind of a plan. And so, you know, I think where efforts like this go wrong is mandates. And sometimes mandates are necessary in terms of, like, you're going to do what I say, I don't care if you have questions about it. This may be one of those situations where, the CEO or whoever mandates, okay, we can't use Facebook anymore. It does not align with who we are as a company. I don't care if you disagree. This is the direction we're moving in. So maybe it's a mandate, or maybe it's a conversation with the teams who work with the Facebook platform to say, if we were to remove Facebook from your arsenal of tools, what does that mean to you? So that you can get a better understanding of just how deeply ingrained Facebook is. And so, maybe they're a company like us and we don't do a lot with Facebook. We might post our videos or we might run our live stream through Facebook, but it's not the only platform that we do that through. So for us, removing ourselves from Facebook is not going to be that big of a deal. We might lose a couple of followers, but can we live with that? Yeah, probably. Facebook isn't really where people watch our live stream anyway. So could we remove that channel? Yeah, absolutely. We can do all of those things and we won't be terribly impacted by that. Now, companies like our good friends at B Squared Media, who a lot of their services are running social ads, most of their clients are asking for Facebook ads because they are B2C, so business to consumer companies. And so selling things like jewelry, advertising, property that's for rent, those kinds of things. A lot of people go to Facebook to get that information. Facebook has basically positioned itself as your one-stop shop for news, for information, for buying things, for learning what's happening, for getting the latest and greatest, pretty much everything, and connecting with people. So to start the change management process, first you need to understand for your own company how deep the roots are with Facebook, how much of an impact that's going to be before you just start saying we can't do this anymore, because there may be unintended consequences of that and a ripple effect of like, okay, if we move ourselves from Facebook, we're also actually removing ourselves from Instagram. We're also actually removing ourselves from WhatsApp or whatever the other, few services that Facebook actually owns. So that has those consequences. And so I would say to start that change management process, you first need to understand the magnitude of the issue for your company. It's not enough to just say, we're not going to do this anymore.
And so, putting on your hat as a marketer, what does that plan look like to replace Facebook from a services perspective? If you are a company that is trying to market, if you are an agency that markets on behalf of clients, what do we replace Facebook with, given that it does have so many people on it?
It may not be one thing, it may be, a suite of things. And so the first thing, tactically you need to understand is who is your audience? Who are you marketing to on Facebook? Who are those people? What are their interests? And where else do they hang out? Are they only ever on Facebook? So is it something where, you can start the process of asking people, hey, we're going to be moving away from Facebook. If you're comfortable, please give us your email address and sign up for our newsletter instead. You can get the same kind of content, whatever the thing is. If it's if you're a B2B company and you're on Facebook, odds are you may be able to find the same types of people on Twitter or LinkedIn. And so really just understanding who your audience is on Facebook is number one. And then number two is figuring out how else can I reach this same group. And so it may be, letting people know actively, hey, we're moving away from Facebook. Here's where you can find us instead. Um, and it really depends because there are a lot of other social media platforms out there. Chris, this is something that you do reporting on at least annually in terms of what's going on with social media platforms. And the list continues to grow. And I think that it would be an opportunity for companies to get creative with how they're reaching people. So if you rely on Facebook videos, maybe YouTube or another video streaming platform would be a way to reach people. So I would say definitely figure out who's on there, who you're reaching, and then it may not be replacing it with one tool, it may be a suite of tools.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, TikTok obviously is having just crossed 1 billion users, monthly users, is certainly one of the candidates on the video side. So much so that the head of Instagram development has basically said we're pivoting to try and make Instagram more like TikTok because it's eating our lunch. So there is that. I also think there's an opportunity for folks to look at, running their own communities, setting up a Discord server for you and your friends that you want to stay in touch with, being able to have a place where people can go, or a Slack community, like, the Slack community that we run, Analytics for Marketers. We have about 2,000 people in there that some of them we don't have any other way of reaching other than like maybe email. So we don't need yet another third-party service to get at those folks. What will be challenging, I think, will be, like you said, for those companies where there's a lot of revenue online. But the other thing that I think might be helpful there is that we know, thanks to increasingly strict privacy regulations and stuff, the Facebook ads themselves are performing, less and less well over time, to the point where it will be not only an ethical decision, but a financial decision as well, to say, like, look, we're flinging a lot of money at these ads and we're not getting the results that we used to. Maybe we need to run TikTok ads instead, or try out more in-app advertising directly in the apps that we know our customers want. Knowing your audience really is the most important thing there, because if you survey your existing audience and say like 80% of them say, oh yeah, we all play the video game Top War. Okay, let's run ads in Top War. Let's go to an ad exchange, run ads in that game, and see if we can pick up new folks who are similar in interest. It's just that the marketers would have to be willing to do that level of research.
And I think that is really where the change management will fail or succeed, is the willingness to make the change. We've all gotten used to Facebook Business Manager and the ins and outs of running Facebook ads, and it's just sort of like it's fairly straightforward. Like, to their credit, their UI is not that complicated. And so it comes down to, are marketers willing to learn something new, to do that research. It might be the task of the CMO to determine, like, here are the 5 platforms that we're going to test out. For companies that are running ads, it is going to be risky because if they've never run ads on other platforms before, they don't know the kind of performance that they can expect to get. And therefore, how do they pass that along to their clientele to say, this is what you're going to get instead of Facebook? Because I guarantee there's going to be plenty of companies out there like, well, we'll still run ads on Facebook. If nobody else will, we will, and we'll take the money. There's going to be plenty of companies out there like that. So there's definitely going to be that moral and ethical decision that you as a company need to make of, are you okay losing that business to somebody else because Facebook doesn't align? But then also, are you okay experimenting and testing with these other platforms that may be unknown to you, that you may lose a little bit of money? And so it's going to be a real R&D project where you're investing, and those are sunk costs that you may not get back because it may take a while to find the right kinds of things. I would actually say right now, um, given what's going on with Facebook, it's a huge opportunity for all of these other platforms to really be promoting themselves. Be like, hey, look what we can do. These are the kinds of results that we get. These are the kinds of audiences that we attract. Here's what you can do that's a one-to-one with Facebook. Like, if you are a company that offers some kind of an advertising platform, if you're not out there today, you're missing an opportunity because people are going to be looking today.
Exactly. And one of the things that we do know, particularly for the generation of folks who are under 30, when we look at how they allocate investments, when we look at funds that do well, ESG funds do very well, environmental, social, and governance funds. And these are investments where there's an ethical purpose of some kind at the heart of them, and people are saying, "I want to invest in companies that align with what the way I want the world to be. I want to invest in companies that have a lower carbon footprint. I want to invest in companies that are open and transparent in their reporting and are governed well." And I think that, to your point, if a company can say, "Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. We need your help, customers and friends." We need your help to reach out to others in the community and who are like you, that would like to work with us, so that we can divorce ourselves from Facebook, so that we don't have to give them any money, because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt Facebook itself will not change. The reason it won't change is because the CEO is still the majority shareholder and the chairman of the board. So the board can't even evict management. Normally, in a situation where you have a non-functional company, the board of directors swoops in and just cleans house and says, "Okay, we're firing everybody in the C-suite." That cannot happen at Facebook. There is no way for that to happen because the CEO is the majority shareholder. So Facebook won't change. So the onus of change is on us. But I think you're right, Katie, not only for the ad companies themselves to do that outreach, but for companies, regular companies, to say, "Hey, we want to leave Facebook. We need your help marketing to your friends," because otherwise we would normally use Facebook to do that. Help us understand where else you spend your time. If you like what we do, please recommend us to your friends through any channel except Facebook, and see what kind of results you get that way.
I feel like companies are going to want to do right, but I can see where trying to make this kind of change is going to feel very isolating. And I say that in the sense of, like, so let's say we were a company that ran ads. Chris, obviously you and I would be having this conversation and saying, you know what, we don't feel comfortable running ads on Facebook anymore. And so, we start to make that switch, but nobody else is making that switch because there's so much money tied up in it. I can see where, from a psychological standpoint, we would be feeling like, well, why are we the only ones who are making this change? Why is everybody else still comfortable? Should we still be comfortable with it? And you start to, second guess your decisions if, even though what you're doing is right, nobody else is following suit. You're like, well, wait a minute. Am I doing the right thing, or am I just getting up on my soapbox for no reason? And I should still be running ads on Facebook. Now, obviously, it's, more complicated than that, but I can see where, even smaller companies, they're going to struggle to balance that, doing what's right versus, what's financially sound. To your point, Chris, Facebook's not going to change. They're not going to go away. So they're still going to continue to offer the opportunity to run ads through their platform. And that's going to be really hard for companies to walk away from. And it's purely financial. It's not because they don't know what Facebook is or what they stand for. It's a money thing.
One of the interesting antidotes to that, or potential antidotes to that, though, is if you have a channel, a method of communication besides Facebook, to talk to your customers, asking them how your decisions change how they feel about your brand, right? And if you can point to evidence that behaving ethically and demonstrating ethically and putting your money where your mouth is improves customer retention, or improves word of mouth marketing, then when you do have those doubts, you can say, well, I have evidence here that says that our customers, the people who pay our bills, like what we're doing. And again, that falls on marketing to do that research and to say, hey, if we how do you feel about us no longer supporting Facebook as a company? If all the customers say we don't care, then it's not going to be as big of an impact, and then you have only your ethics to go on. But I'd like to think that at least for some companies, that alone is enough for them to make a decision. In a lot of companies, it's not. The reality is money makes literally everything function in the business world. And so if you are intentionally taking less profits, there are downstream consequences for that. But at least from an executive's perspective, you'll probably sleep better.
Yeah, and it's a tricky balance because doing what's right is not always what's easy. And so it's, finding that balance. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of days, weeks, months. My gut is saying that not a lot is going to change, unfortunately, because Facebook is such a huge, massive global company that unless, some other entity can step in and govern them and change leadership, you're absolutely right, Chris. It's not going to change. They can't remove the majority shareholders who are willingly making these decisions. And the more we learn about the actions and behaviors and decision making of these individuals, quite honestly, the more gross it is. But they're the ones who are complete power, so it's not going to change, and it's really frustrating. As people who want to do the right thing. But what I will say, Chris, is that I feel comfortable, putting the stake in the ground to say, you know what? We don't need to put our live stream on Facebook anymore, or we don't need to push out content on Facebook anymore to try to get people to engage with us. We moved our community group off of Facebook a while ago, and we can shut that down completely. Like, I feel comfortable, at least for Trust Insights, starting to take the steps to move away from Facebook altogether. It's when we look at our data, when we look at our attribution modeling, Facebook really doesn't do a whole lot for us anyway. So for us, at least, it's not a big loss. And so for us, it's more about the principle of it versus, Facebook will never notice that we're missing. Facebook will never feel like, oh, Trust Insights isn't with us anymore. But we will know that we are upholding our own values by not engaging with a platform like Facebook. So I think that, right here, right now in this podcast, I am making the decision as the CEO, we are going to start taking those steps to move away from Facebook completely.
And here's one thing that pretty much anyone can do that will have varying consequences. So don't just do it, because do change management properly.
Right.
But
yeah, don't just do things.
Don't just do things. But one thing that you could do, and especially if it's something that you have decision-making authority over, is remove tracking pixels from any properties you control, because Facebook relies on two things. It relies on the people on the network, right? That switching cost, but it also is more reliant than ever on any data it can grab, because so much is getting blocked in things like Apple's iOS operating system. If you remove tracking pixels from your properties, you are effectively blinding Facebook from being able to understand your audience better. So if you, again, do change management properly, don't just arbitrarily go and start deleting things. But if you know that it's not, Facebook is not a big deal. Pull those tracking pixels off. It'll do a few things. One, it blinds Facebook, which makes it harder for the company to do business. And two, it speeds up your website, because the less stuff that you have, even when you're running in a great service like Google Tag Manager, the less stuff you have loading, the faster your website gets. So give those some consideration as well.
All right. Well, Chris, I think we have some work to do. At the end of the day, it really comes down to, as a company, what you are the most comfortable with. So if someone questions your decision to stay on Facebook, given everything that's come out, then you should probably be ready with a response. You know, because as a company, you do have to justify your actions. You can't just say, because I said so, because I feel like it. In the business world, that doesn't fly. You're not mom and dad. People will question you and they will expect you to have answers. And so for us, my response to that is, I think the way in which Facebook is operating is super shady, it's unethical, and it's not the type of platform that we want to be associated with. That's why we started our own thing, so that we could more easily make those decisions, to walk away from things that don't make us comfortable.
Exactly. We would not be comfortable doing business with a company that is more harm than good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It does not make the world a better place. It's one of the things that is in our core values, is we want to leave things better than we found it, and this is clearly a platform that does not do that. So we will go off and do that. If you would like to have a chat with us, just a chat, pop on over to our Analytics for Marketers Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. I would be curious if folks would be interested in having a discussion about the tactical steps you would need to make to assess whether you are ready to leave Facebook or not, right? From an analytics perspective. I think that'd be an interesting, almost like a Facebook migration service to evacuate, to pull the whipcord. But of course, if you have any other questions or comments about this episode or anything we've talked about, head on over to the Slack group. Again, that's trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. And wherever it is that you watch or listen to the show, if there's a platform you prefer to have it on except Facebook, go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Need help making your marketing platforms, processes, and people work smarter? Visit trustinsights.ai today and learn how we can help you deliver more impact.